the higher ups are not working for us anymore. They're not working with us. And that's what I think has become the most evident in the past year, especially, is that people are like, oh, no matter who we elect, on which side, whatever it is, it's all this sort of shell game.
If I was as corrupt as Dan Crenshaw, you really think they would hassle me?
Dan Crenshaw, the guy from Texas?
Yeah.
Is he corrupt?
Well, on the most deep, on a moral level, he's completely corrupt. I mean, he takes orders from his donors to do things that have nothing to do with the welfare of his voters.
It's almost as if Theo Von and Tucker Carlson scripted this portion of their discussion for Cenk Uygur, who loves this topic. And the topic, of course, has to do with government corruption. Before we get to what Tucker had to say, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, look, we do the Young Turks 6 to 8 o'clock every day, right here on YouTube and every other platform. And at 8 o'clock, I do a show called The Revolution. And what's the point of that? End corruption, get our government back. That's not my favorite issue. Honestly, it's the only issue, because until you solve that, you won't be able to solve any other issue, because they're not working for us, they're working for the donors. And seeing Theo Von, Tucker Carlson talk about it, although I hear that they're both canceled because at some point somebody talked to Fuentes. Anyway, but nevertheless, somehow this conversation happened. When I see them talking about that, I'm like, yes, left, right, center, great awakening. Let's realize this is all theater and the politicians are all crooks.
Exactly, and this is an issue that impacts every political group at any movement, because when you have a small group of incredibly wealthy people throwing their money around to buy our politicians, well, the rest of us have a lot less say in our political system and the decisions our politicians make. In fact, here's Tucker Carlson explaining exactly what I mean.
It's the deal that we all make with ourselves to get what we want. Like, I want to be powerful. I want to get reelected. I want to get rich. I want to bang that girl. And you make these compromises with yourself in which you consciously decide to be dishonest. In order to get elected, I have to do the following things. I have to basically subvert democracy by carrying water for a tiny group of people against the interests of my actual voters. Like, that itself is a sin, it's a crime, but it's so ubiquitous you don't even notice it. It's deals like that. I'm gonna take money from a foreign lobby that somehow isn't registered as a foreign lobby or whatever. I'll support this thing that I think is probably pretty wrong, but I'm gonna do it because I have to. It's those kind of moral compromises that wind up making people slaves. And that's what they are, they're slaves. We have hundreds of slaves, otherwise known as members of Congress. And what are they slaves to? Evil. Because they've made these compromises in order to get what they think is the prize, which is re-election.
I had never heard the argument framed in the way that you just heard Tucker Carlson frame it, but I could not agree more. You are a slave if you're willing to take money from donors to do as they say, and you're not really a free person who is guided by your own morals, your values, your principles. There is nothing more liberating than being free to speak your mind, to advocate for the causes you actually genuinely care about. And you can just tell when someone is a free person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so look, he just uses slightly different words than I do, and maybe they're harsher, but I say servants, he says slaves. You've seen me refer to them as waiters and waitresses and servants for the donor class. And I have a spectacular example for you guys in a second. He says evil, I say corrupt, I say crooks, but it's the same idea, guys. So the spectacular example is one I've told many times on the Young Turks, but also is in my book, Justice is Coming. Ted Cruz had his wife insulted, of course, in 2016 by Donald Trump when they're running in the primary. And then they go to the convention. Ted Cruz does not endorse Donald Trump in his speech. And that's him being a tough guy, going, oh yeah? Well, you said this about my family and I'm not gonna endorse you, okay? So then he goes up to the suite in the big stadium they're having it in. That's his top donor, and those are the Mercers, and they are Wall Street bankers. Robert and Rebecca Rebecca's the daughter. So they have given Ted Cruz in that primary $13 million. So when he goes up there, he thinks, oh, I'm gonna be feted, and these are, I'm here, master, right? And they slammed a door in his face, and they say, no, now our guy is Trump because he won. He's gonna give us the tax cuts. He's gonna give us everything we wanted. So shut up if you ever want another dollar and go back and grovel to Donald Trump. And within the week, Ted Cruz is phone banking for Donald Trump. and making calls. Will you please vote for Donald Trump?
It's the best photo ever.
Okay, and why is that? That's because he's a servant of the Mercers.
Yep.
Ted Cruz actually has no power. That's why when he was talking to Tucker Carlson, he said, when I was elected to serve Israel. And he literally said that. Why? Because Israeli donors are just part of his donor class. The Mercers are different, right? And so the Israeli donors told him, you are to serve Israel, you servant. And he took that very literally. So all these guys that are politicians, the mainstream media makes it seem like you should have a lot of respect for them. Oh my God, they have the status, they're a senator, right? No, they're actually the lowest people in the country. You should have no respect for them at all. They're the people who raised their hand and said, I will be a servant to the donor class, screw over my own voters, lie to them, and then secretly work for the rich and powerful, rig the rules in their behalf so your wages are lower, your housing prices are higher, your drug prices are higher, and we serve different countries and different companies. Yeah. So you can call them slaves, you can call them servants, but they have no real power. The real power is in the donors, and that's what the media and the politicians desperately don't want you to find out.
I slightly disagree, and the only area where I disagree is that there have been instances in which the people overwhelmingly disagreed with what the donors wanted. I mean, we just saw that happen with Kamala Harris. She raised so much money in the election in such a short period of time. She did outraise Donald Trump, that's for sure, but it didn't help her in the end. Because if you have a campaign that doesn't actually offer voters something to vote in favor of, well, there are gonna be ramifications to that, right? Another example, by the way, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who didn't take corporate PAC money, but she was one of the biggest fundraisers in Congress when it came to small dollar donors. And I do think that it's because, regardless of whether you agree with her politics or not, she was speaking to the issues that people in her district cared about.
But Anna, I don't think that's an exception. I think that proves the case. So Kamala Harris's donors told her, you are not to defy Israel even 1 inch, even though 90% of your voters and a great percentage of the American voters are against what Israel's doing. So we want you to hurt your chances of winning. And she said, yeah, I care less about winning and more about my donors because I'm a servant.
The point that I'm trying to make is, if voters are paying attention, they do have the ultimate power, because why are they taking the donations anyway? Or why are they taking the bribes anyway? They're taking it because they think, I need this money in order to win the election.
So chapter 4 of my book, Just Coming, is exactly about this, how the Democratic Party forgot the means and the ends, right? And they originally started taking corporate money, and I explained the whole history of it, because they thought, well, we got to keep up with the Republicans, that way we could win and do our agenda. And through the decades, they forgot what their agenda was, and their agenda became just serving the donors, even if it cost them elections. They got so deranged and detached from reality, and they so owned the servant role that they forgot that the whole point was to win elections and do the agenda. So now all they ever do is serve the donors, and they will walk off a cliff for them. They will lose elections just to make the donors happy. Because guys, that's what they were selected for. The donors weren't looking for incredibly bright people that are strong, independent leaders. They were looking for the very worst of us, the people who could be cowed into doing exactly what they are ordered because they're empty vessels. So, and if you see me criticizing the Democrats for that, which you've seen me do for 20 years, remember, that's the entirety of the Republican Party. And you just saw Tucker Carlson being honest about it there. He's attacking Dan Crenshaw, who's a Republican from Texas. And that's why people talk about the uni-party, because it doesn't really matter if you're a corporate Democrat or a corporate Republican. They've been agreeing for the last 40 years, tax cuts for the rich, deregulate corporations, give everything to the powerful and to the donor class, and never anything to the American people. And the only reason why not every American realizes that is because traditional media, legacy media came in and told you, no, these are adversaries and they really disagree. But when they get together for bipartisanship and they give another corporate tax cuts, oh, that's so great. That means they're moderates and serving the American people. And then you poll the issue that they agreed on, and it polls at 16%, right? They're not serving the American people at all, and neither is national media. All of this is an effort to trick you into giving your money to the politicians, to the government, and then the politicians then distributing it, not to people who need it, not to the Americans, but to the donor class. It is one glorified, gigantic robbery. And the last part of it is, and we talk about this on the Young Turks all the time, the culture wars is a distraction so you don't notice the robbery. Oh, hey guys, fight over there on trans issues and this issue and that issue, but don't look there where the tax cuts are and the deregulation is and the mergers are and the limiting of capitalism where we're not allowed to negotiate drug prices, the bankers robbing you blind 24/7, right? That's the job of the media. They're the getaway car, okay? So I love to see right, left, and center agreeing to it. We've been standing a post here for 20 years waiting for this cavalry. And I love that the cavalry's here. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.